Hello, mighty companions. This is Earl Purdy, and I want to welcome you to Facebook Live, A Course in Miracles. And we're going to start out with a section today called The Ego's Use of Guilt, our use of guilt, how we use guilt and how we need to stop and how we can let that go. But what is our use of guilt? What is the wrong mind's use of guilt, which is another term for the ego in A Course in Miracles. So here we go, and we're going to let ourselves hear our theme song. I am not a victim of the world I see. Here we go. So take a breath while it's cranking up here. I am not a victim. I am not a victim. I am not a victim of the world I see. The world I see. Not a victim of the world I see. Got to tell you now. Not a victim of the world I see. Got to tell you now. Not a victim. If you know the words, let's go. I'm not a victim of the world I see. I'm not a victim of the world I see. I'm not a victim, no, of the world I see. You hear me? I'm not a victim of my mom. I'm not a victim of my pa. I'm not a victim of events or circumstance at all. I'm not a victim of the world I see. Cause what's happening now is what I've done to me. I'm not a victim of the future, not a victim of the past, not a victim of anything that really doesn't last. I'm not a victim of the world I see. I'm not a victim of the world I see. Cause what's happening now, what I've done to me. That includes the good stuff. I'm not a victim of the world I see. I'm not a victim of the world I see. I'm not a victim, no, of the world I see. Now listen to this. You need not believe the ideas. You need not accept the ideas. You need not even welcome the ideas. Some of the ideas you may actively resist. Some of the ideas you may actively resist. Some of the ideas you may actively resist. I'm not a victim of the North. I'm not a victim of the South. Not a victim of anything except what comes out my mouth. I'm not a victim of the world I see. I'm not a victim of the world I see. Cause what's happening now is what I've done to me. Come out now. I'm not a victim of the world I see. I'm not a victim of the world I see. I'm not a victim of the world I see. Some of the ideas you will find hard to believe, and others may seem to be quite startling. And others may seem to be quite startling. You're not asked to analyze the ideas at all. You're not asked to judge the ideas at all. I'm not a victim of the world I see. I'm not a victim of the world I see. Cause what's happening now is what I've done to me. Oh yeah. What's happening to me, including the good stuff, is what I've done to me. All right. I say that every class because it's the key to being able to do the Course in Miracles. I've come to the conclusion after 40 years of working with the Course in Miracles that the Course in Miracles is telling people how to learn the Course in Miracles.
But what happens is that most people bring their past learning into it and then try to fit the Course in Miracles into the way they think. So then they end up battling with it. And it's like, it's just giving you another way of looking at things. That's all. So we're going to do the ego's use of guilt, which is on page 83 in the text, the Foundation for Inner Peace version of the Course in Miracles, the Blue Book. I call myself now the Divine Repetition Teacher and the Remembering Coach, because what I've seen over and over again is that all the blessings that the Course in Miracles promises does not come to the people who analyze the Course. It comes to the people who remember what it says and uses it. You can sit around and debate the ideas all day long, but then I want to ask people, when you're studying something that all you want to do is fight and argue with it? It doesn't make sense to me. It's like if all you're doing is trying to prove to yourself how everything is saying isn't true, then what are you studying it for? If you already don't believe it and you don't want to believe it, then what's the point of studying it? So I'm not saying that you're not going to have resistance. It makes perfect sense that if somebody's teaching you something that's different from what you believe, that you would have some resistance come up, because it's opposite to what you believe. So the question I'd like to ask you is, are you satisfied with the results of what you've learned? If you're defending it so hard, has it given you peace? Has it given you love? Has it given you a sense of being sustained and taken care of? What you believe, does it make you feel safe, loved, lovable, connected? But if you are unhappy, miserable, and don't feel fulfilled, then why should you want somebody to believe what you do? It wouldn't make much sense, but it's not the way the world works. People who haven't had a relationship in 30 years will be trying to tell you what to do with yours. People broke as they can be will be telling you what you should do with your money. You know what I'm saying? Somebody that can't reach out in a friendly, loving way is the first one to try to tell you how you should be making friends. It's crazy. So I'm going to, my focus is on, I would rather do one paragraph that we all remember what it was saying than to go through 3 pages of stuff that people will forget as soon as they get through listening to it. So do you know that some of the concepts in the Course in Miracles will become clearer and more personally meaningful if you understand your ego's use of guilt? In other words, your use of guilt. The mind that thinks it is a person that is separate from other people in a body that's separate and different from other people, the Course says that person, that mind, is the ego. Well, sometimes people wonder, well, what is the ego? It's you who identify with being separate and a body. That's when the Course in Miracles says ego. He's talking about us. The us that thinks we are different. Then people go, well, I don't think I'm separate from you. That's great that you say that. I don't believe it, but it's great that you're saying that. Because you think you're separate from me. If you didn't, you would be as interested in wanting to make sure that I had food, clothing, and shelter as you want to have food, clothing, and shelter. If you really thought I was you and you were me and we were connected to each other, then that means we would all be looking out for each other equally. So we want to recognize that we are not separate, but to say you believe you're not is not true if your behavior doesn't demonstrate that. And so according to the Course, that mind that thinks it's separate is the mind that uses guilt to try to manipulate and control themselves and other people. Anger is an attempt to make someone feel guilty to do what you want them to do. And I keep saying according to the Course, because I'm not here to defend the Course in Miracles. I'm here to be a messenger. So I just want you to know that the part of the mind that thinks it's separate, the part of the mind that has fear and conflict, the Course says that part of the mind has a purpose. So your ego has a purpose. Do you know your ego, your sense of separation, that part of you that thinks you are a human being that is separate from other human beings, who has your own individual concerns and problems, as well as some joyful times? The Course says that part of your mind that experiences fear, that part of your mind called the ego, has a purpose. Just as the Holy Spirit has a purpose. What is the Holy Spirit? The Holy Spirit is the part of your mind that is sane, that knows it is loved, that is aware and connected still with the divine. The Course calls it your sane mind, your right mind. It says that it's the part of you that truly is loving, that truly is loving. It's called the ego. So the mind is split into, one half of the mind thinks it's separate. The other half of the mind is the part of the mind that thinks it's one. Everybody with me on that? Then it says, now I'm going to tell you what the purpose of your ego is. The purpose of the part of you that thinks it's separate. Course in Miracles says, do you know there's a part of you that has one purpose? To make you afraid. There's a part of you that wants to keep you in some form of fear and some form of conflict. He says before you can really get the concepts that the Course in Miracles is teaching, you need to understand that there is a part of you that believes in fear and feels fear and thinks it can fear. And the Course says fear, it takes the form of sickness, lack, attack, guilt, and grievances, to name a few. So if you say, I don't feel afraid, but I'm weary. I feel afraid, but I feel a little guilt. I don't feel afraid, but I feel anger. The Course in Miracles teaches we only have two emotions. Do you know what those two emotions are? Love and fear. And every other emotion is nothing but another form those two things have taken. So anger is fear. Guilt is fear. Lack is fear. Sickness is fear. A grievance is fear. Sadness is fear. Death is fear. So what do we need to get clear about? He says, well, I want you to get clear that there's a part of you that has a purpose of making you afraid, and it's only the fearful that can be egotistic. So beings that are egotistical, just focused in on their little self, separate from everyone else, that sees themselves as a victim of everything and everyone else, broken into by periods in which you go to the park and have a good time. Broken into by when you go to the movie and take a trip out of town. The Course says that part of the mind, that person has fear. That a person that believes that their body, that could be hurt, that could die one day, that could be prey to forces beyond its control. He says that's egotistic. That's an egotistic mind. It's the mind that thinks he calls it autonomous and self-sufficient. You're just on your own, doing everything on your own. And belief in God is just something that you say because you were taught to say it. You ask the average person, do they believe in God? They go, yes. You ask the average person if they are atheists, they say no. And yet the Course in Miracles says, well, an atheist is not just necessarily someone who says they do not believe in a God that exists. He says an atheist is someone who thinks they are alone. Because that's what an atheist thinks, that I'm on my own. It's all on me. So anytime you think you're autonomous, self-sufficient, and doing things all by yourself and on your own, do you know that from a Course in Miracles perspective, you are an atheist? You think you got to make it. You got to figure out how to make it, and you got to create the way to make it, and you got to, So the Course is telling us, so there's a logic that goes with the mind that thinks it's separate and fearful. And that logic is just as impeccable as the logic of your mind that knows it's joined, connected, unified, and loving. So your ego, which is regular people, use logic. People who think they're separate from each other use logic. And those who know they are divine and united and one, they also use logic. So we still together. There's a logic that goes with me thinking I'm separate from you. And don't you realize there's a logic that goes with me thinking I'm joined with you? So what's next? He says, now, your mind, you may not know it. What is it that you may not know? He says, well, you may not know that your mind has the means at its disposal to side with heaven or earth, to side with love or fear. You have the power to decide or to side with love or fear, heaven or earth, as you elect. But again, what is it that you're supposed to do? Remember that love and fear are both in you. Heaven and earth are both in you. Heaven and earth are both in you. Love and fear are both in you. Innocence and guilt are both in you. Lack thoughts and abundant thoughts are both in you. Joy and pain are both in you. So don't forget, notice it said remember. It didn't say analyze. It said remember. So what is it out of that paragraph that I need to remember? See, that's what I want to do in my course classes. What is it that I need to remember? I need to remember that my ego has a purpose just like my spirit does. My ego's purpose is to make me afraid, because when I feel afraid, I feel separate. And the ego is the part of the mind that believes that separation. The Course says, now I'll turn around and I'll use everything that you believe to your advantage and to wake you up. So therefore, even if you do believe in separation, and you do believe there's some advantage to separation and differences, so you get upset at the very thought that that's of the ego. He said, well, I'll turn around and I'll use your difference, your uniqueness, your separateness. That will become your unique way of God expressing the truth and love through you. So you'll call it your individual expression of love. You want it to be separate. I want it to be separate. We have bodies to be separate in. We have personalities. We did it. We pulled it off. It's done. Okay? So it's kind of redundant to want to focus on doing something you've already done. We've already done separation. And we are, do you know this is the cool part? Right now, we are experiencing the result of it. The world that we live in is the world that you live in when you really think you're separate from each other and that you're not one with each other. This is the world that comes from not loving yourself, but fearing and hating yourself. The Course is saying what you're doing is seeing what it's like to forget your relationship with God. This is what happens. A world where there's so much divisiveness and fear and lack and wars and diseases and attacks and murders and robberies, broken into by a trip to Hawaii. I'm going to keep on saying that. That he says, the Course in Miracles says, happiness that doesn't last was just fear in a form that you like. That's deep. So any fear, any happiness that doesn't last, the Course in Miracles defines as a fear that you like.
That's deep.
Isn't that deep?
Really deep.
That's really deep. So then he says, well, do you want to know if you're egotistical? He says, well, if you're egotistical, you are right now, you have fears and concerns and worries about something. Then you're in your ego. But he also says the part of you that's loving, it can use logic just as good as the part of you that has fear. So if you want to make the Course make sense, it says, I will talk to you as if you're separate, because that's what you think you are, and that's the easiest way to work with you. So I'm going to act like there's a God, there's a Holy Spirit, there's a Jesus of the Course. I'm going to talk to you like even spirit is separate, Father, because you all can relate to separation easier than you can relate to oneness. So that's why I'm going to talk to you like, there's a part of you that's ego, and a part of you that's spirit, and a part of you that thinks you're a body, and then there's a part of you that thinks you're not. So in other words, I'm trying to be joined and unjoined at the same time. I'm saying to you that I'm one with you, but then I'm treating you just like you're not. I'm one with you, so, tell me your deepest, darkest secrets, and how much money you got in your bank account, and what happened last night, because we're the same beings, so you can just give all that to me and share. The man would go, what are you talking about? Right, you don't really think I'm one with you. Come on, you don't really think I'm one with you. You know you don't really think that. You want to think that, and it's the truth. You really are one with me, and I really am one with you, but you know what? I do not know that with absolute certainty. And I don't treat you that way. See, after all these years with the Course, I love telling the truth about my ego. But usually when people are newer to it, The only reason why they feel good about themselves is because they lied to themselves. So they don't really want to admit their ego, you know. Right. It's like right now I'm so confident that God loves me no matter what that I can say Earl has a selfish part, jealous part, insecure part, undependable part, a part that also has grievances. You know, I don't have a problem saying that. Because now I know that that's not going to cause my Creator not to love me or support me or to help me. So as soon as you lose your fear of God and the fear of punishment and let go of that idea, then you're much more honest about all your feelings, because you also know that's how you heal it, is that you're willing to look at it. Okay? So what is it that we're supposed to remember? He says, remember that heaven and earth, which is love or fear, are in you. So then it goes on to tell you, well, I'm going to tell you what it's like in heaven. And the Course in Miracles says heaven is just another word for your reality. I'm going to tell you what it's, you all think you all are in reality. You're not in reality. Reality isn't like this. I'm going to tell you how you can tell when you're in heaven, which is real love. This is how you can tell when you're experiencing real love. The first thing is there is no guilt. So if I have real love with you, I'm not feeling guilt with you, and I'm certainly not feeling guilt about how I feel about you. In heaven, in reality, there is no guilt. And then it goes, well, why? He says, well, because the kingdom, which is love, is attained through the atonement. And do you know the Course defines the atonement as the correction of error and the undoing of guilt. So when he says atonement, it's saying you're going to achieve love, the kingdom, through the undoing of your guilt and fear. That love comes from the undoing of guilt and fear. So if I'm in a relationship and it's full of guilt and fear, I can safely say I am not in love with this person. But so much of our relationships have so much anger and guilt and fear and arguments that people don't want to hear that. So they say, well, I feel jealous. That's how I know I love you, is because I feel jealous. If I didn't love you, I wouldn't be getting angry. See, what we do is we change love to what we are capable of doing. I'm capable of giving conditional love. I don't know how to give unconditional love. So so I'm going to make love conditional now. So that means you only love me. Which any conscious being knows that's as opposite to what love really is as you can come up with, is a love that's only for you. There's no such thing as a love that's a real love that's only for you, because the nature of love is inclusive and that it's equally given to everyone. I love this book says, let me give you all a little hint. Love is going to be as God that created it defined it, and not y'all. Okay? You didn't create, of course, says one of the laws of chaos. He gives these laws of chaos that create chaos. He said one law is we think we can define God and then tell God what God must believe. And if God isn't like what we made God to be, then God's wrong. Yeah. That's what he said. He said, you all actually think you can tell the Creator what it is. And if the Creator doesn't agree with your version of it, he says, by the way, you didn't even ask the Creator its definition of itself, by the way. Human beings came up with what they think God is about. And then he says, actually, which I did was made God in your image. You gave God the same characteristics that you all have. You said God gets jealous, God gets upset, God got special children that he loves more than others that's going to get to heaven, and some of them are not. He says, our version of God is nothing but a blown up version of the way we do it. We have given God our image. And so when the Course tells us what love is really like, that what the Creator is really like, then the temptation is to go, well, that ain't the truth. Like some people get upset with me when I say there is no sin. The Course says there is no sin, that there's no mistake that you could make that God couldn't correct. There's nothing you could do that love would ever condemn you for. Well, human beings don't know how to give that kind of love. They don't know how to give love unconditionally no matter what a person does. So when they hear that, it said it couldn't be true. What about the murderers? Well, they still are loved by the Creator. Who they really are is loved by the Creator. Their ego, of course, is not love. This book isn't asking you to love nobody's ego. The course isn't asking you to love somebody's personality that's attacking and angry and selfish. So when I say love somebody, I'm not talking about love the biggest, the person that's the crappiest person you know. It's like I'm asking you to love what that person really is that they've lost sight of through their crappiness. That's what it's asking you to love. It's not asking you to love somebody that's, murdering 5 or 6 people. It's asking you to remember there's a part of that person that would never murder 5 or 6 people that you want to get in touch with, because then that pretty much assures you won't be the next victim. I don't want to get in touch with the murderer. I don't want to make the murderer real, right? So the Course in Miracles says, read me slowly. Read me slowly. So in heaven, so let's get this straight. In heaven, there's no guilt. So if you're in real love, there's no guilt. Then understand that you're going to attain the love through the undoing of your errors and mistakes, which is the atonement. And once your errors and mistakes have been cleared up, then he says, this is going to release you to create. So I'm not going to be released to love until I get rid of my guilt. Nobody's going to experience love from Earl as long as he's full of guilt. So then what? He says, now the word create, guess what? The word create, what is it? It's appropriate here. Now listen to this. Okay, once the fear and separation that you've made is undone, what's going to happen next? Well, first of all, understand that it says, once what you have made, when it says that, it's talking about fear. Once that's undone by the Holy Spirit, your sane mind, then there's going to be a blessed residue in your mind that's nothing but love. And it's going to continue in creation, which is love. So the part of you that causes you fear and conflict is going to be undone. What's left is going to continue in love and extension and creation. What's truly blessed is incapable of giving rise to guilt. So if you're in a relationship that you feel really blessed in, do you know that if you're in any situation that you feel that's a blessing to you, then you will have no guilt. You will feel no guilt. So it's no such thing as being in a relationship that you think is truly blessed, but all you feel is guilt around it and fear around it. So if you're in a relationship, and that relationship you are giving yourself a lot of guilt about, you're not in a relationship that's blessed. If you're with somebody and all you feel is guilt and fear, you're not in a real relationship. A real relationship just gives rise to joy. It says it right here. It says what is truly blessed is incapable of giving rise to guilt. And it must give rise to joy. So if you're in a relationship with anyone and you are truly experiencing joy without guilt and attack, you are experiencing a truly blessed relationship. And that can apply to anything. If in your financial situation you feel joy and you don't feel guilt, you're in a perceived blessed financial situation. If you look at your body and you give yourself joy about what you see, you're having a blessed relationship with your body. If you look at your body and you feel guilty, your relationship with your body is not truly blessed. Now you know where you stand. That's what I love about the Course in Miracles, is that you can't be in denial and truly study a Course in Miracles. That's why I tell people, the Course in Miracles has something that's guaranteed to offend everyone. I don't care how open-minded you think you are or what a great metaphysical spiritual giant you think you are. I guarantee you're going to run across something in this book that you're going to go, oh, hell no. What do you mean? No, I got resistance to that. You'll find it. You'll hit your sentence and where you'll see you're really rooted and you're stuck and want to be right more than you want to be happy. Okay, so sometimes, I at the end of the day, I will look back at the way that I felt that day, and I will go back and I'll say, you know what, Earl, you were misperceiving this entire day. Because you were not happy today. You were concerned today. You were depressed today about something. You were worried about something. So, Earl, just admit to yourself that you didn't see one damn thing correctly that happened to you today. And what happens is it lifts because I just told the truth. Because the truth is, when I'm sad and unhappy, there is something I'm not seeing correctly. Because if you have correct perception of your life, you feel love and you feel peace. Then the court says, but then you're going to come up with the yes buts. But the yes buts are just your justification for continuing the way you already think. That's all your yes but is. Your yes but is you want to defend the way that you're already seeing things. So you go, yes but. That means I want to hang on. You know when people say something to you, as soon as they say but, you know you can discount everything they just said before the but, right? They go, I really love you, I really care about you, but, well, okay, we just wiped that out. Okay, this is what you're getting ready to say now. This is what's really happening. So I think it's good news to know that there's a part of me that's so full of love that it can undo any fear that I make, and I can have this only good, loving part of me left that continues in creation, which is the extension of love. Because do you realize the Course in Miracles defines creation as the extension of love, the extension of your freedom, the extension of your truth? Because people ask me often, what does the Course mean by creation? You're extending love. You're extending love. It's not talking about making. Making is what you do when, like, somebody make a TV, make a cell phone. We call it being invented, but the Course calls it making. We're really taking what already exists and we're making something out of it. That's not creation. So me doing a painting is not creation. The creation is me extending something that can never end and never can be destroyed, and that's love. Only love, which is joy and happiness, can really be created. The forms we have it in, those are made. So anything that's made is temporary. Anything that's created is eternal or permanent. Is there anything in this world in form that we see that's permanent? I'll say to give you the answer. No. Okay. So that means that there's nothing in the world that is actually real. By the definition of real, which means permanent and eternal. So based on the idea that something that's real is something that's eternal, then nothing here is real. If you base it on the what? The premise that what is real is eternal. Now, does that say I'm not holding the microphone right now, or that I still not going to have a nice meal this evening? No. The fact that it's a form means it's going to change. So I wouldn't be in a relationship of any kind and expect the form of it to stay the same. There's no such thing as being in anything in the world that's not going to change form. I'll say it again. There is absolutely nothing you can do in the world that's not going to change. There's no form of, whether it's a relationship, a job, your body, there's nothing you see with your physical eyes that is not going to change. Nothing. Nothing ever that you see with your physical eyes. There's nothing you're going to ever see with your physical eyes that's not going to change. So I don't care what that relationship is like. I don't care what that job is like. I don't care what your body is like. I don't care what your feelings are like. They are going to change. You can count on it. So the Course then says what's truly blessed is incapable of giving rise to what? Guilt. So what's truly blessed gives rise to what? Joy. Now, once you are full of joy, he says that makes you invulnerable to the ego. In other words, your ego, the part of you that would try to judge you, attack you, or give you any kind of fear or conflict, that part of you will never win when you have total peace. Because when you are a person in total peace, you will not let the thoughts of upset, attack, and judgment from your ego affect you anymore. You will have those thoughts, but you won't let those thoughts determine how you feel about anything. You will be aware of the thoughts, but your peace is so great, you're just not going to give your peace up for anything. You're going to get to the point that your peace is going to be more important than any person, any circumstance, or any event. That you will put nothing or no one before your peace. That's how you know when your peace is unassailable. Because I am so happy that I'm not going to let anything make me give that away. Certainly not some thoughts in my mind that I don't have to think. Are y'all with me still?
Yeah.
Is that making sense to everybody? So when it says a statement like, let's go back. He says, was truly blessed is incapable of giving rise to guilt. So if it doesn't make me feel guilty, it makes me feel joyful. If I'm feeling joyful, then my ego, if it's truly joyful and I'm truly, I know y'all know what I'm saying to the truth because you've had situations that you were having such a good time, you went, I ain't gonna let nothing mess with this. Haven't you? And then no matter what came up, you was like, no, this is too good. I'm like, I ain't getting this up. That's what it means when it talks about you being invulnerable to your ego. You've gotten to the point that your own negative thoughts will not pull you off your center. Right? And because remember, he says both of these are in your mind. So when he's talking about Holy Spirit and talking about ego, he's talking about thoughts in your mind. Don't forget, everything that the Course is talking about is in the mind. So give me the next part, Earl. So why is it that your ego is invulnerable to disruption? He says because it's whole. And he says whole is happy. Again, the best defense against the ego of pain is joy. So you owe it to yourself to keep yourself and allow yourself to be as happy as you can possibly be at all times. Happiness is practical. Happiness is practical. Happiness is practical. Happiness keeps you healthy. Happiness keeps you healthy. Happiness allows your abundance to come through. Happiness allows your abundance to come through. Happiness keeps you peaceful. You know the people who are raising all the hell? The people who are most miserable. You know Putin is not a happy guy. Okay, you know that because nobody that's happy would ever attack anybody. It's only the miserable people that rob people and kill people and murder people and use people. It's never happy people that's really hurting anybody in their perception. We need to get that clear. The best thing you can do for everybody you know is to handle your own stuff in the sense of you are responsible for your experience and you're being a loving, peaceful person and you're letting yourself have loving relationships and you're letting yourself have joy. Because the happier you are, the less of a hellraiser you're going to be. You're going to be less of a problem for anybody else when your life is happy. You owe it to everybody you know to let yourself have joy. You're selfish if you're miserable. You are. You're selfish if you're miserable. Why do you want to use you? Why do you want to use you as a witness to everybody around you as to how much they've hurt you? Right? If I walk in this room and immediately I look at you, and let's say I'm in a black body, and I look at you and you in a white body, and I go, ugh, white people. Okay, what am I doing? Through my unhappiness, I'm witnessing to you that you're guilty, that you've done something to hurt me. So people who are unhappy habitually all the time and never do anything about it, they're just people who are putting guilt trips on everybody around them silently. I'm not going to tell you what you've done to me, but I'm going to let you see what you've done to me. So people who are unhappy are merciless to everybody. Merciless people. Especially when there's an alternative to their unhappiness that they could tune into that could get them out of their unhappiness, but they decide that they're not going to do it, which means they don't do anything that's going to help themselves. Then they just want to be a witness to the guilt of everybody around them. And that's their call for love. That's their call for love. That's their call for God. That's their call for love. Because there is a way out of the misery. They're choosing not to use the way out of the misery. So at some level, there's some payoff they're getting out of the misery that they're not ready to give up yet. And it's their right to do that as long as they want to. You don't have the right to force somebody out of their misery before they're ready. So cut it out. And the last person you're supposed to help is the one you select. That's another little tip from the Course in Miracles. How do you know you're getting ready to help the wrong person? You were the one that decided they needed your help. The book says stuff like that. He calls it a consciously selected miracle. And he says a consciously selected miracle can be misguided. In other words, when I consciously say I need to help her out, so I'm going to give her the Course and the benefit of the Course, that is, I don't know what her best interest is, so how could I know what's best for her? And why would I be the one to decide what's best for her as if I know her whole life story and her soul story and what her soul chose to do in this life might call for her to go through this thing that she's going through right now that I can't even imagine how she's able to go through this thing. But the one thing I can be sure of, she's not going through it alone. That if she's ready to avail herself to her inner guide, to her perfect teacher, to the invisible guides that we all had when we came here, then you could go through whatever you're going through with more peace than you're going through it right now. Wow. So the Course in Miracles, if you read it, it just goes in a very logical, reasoning kind of way. Like if you wonder what it's talking about, just keep reading. He's going to always explain it. Okay, then it goes, okay, let's get one thing straight about guilt. Guilt is always disrupted. There's no such thing as having guilt and it's not disrupted to peace. Why is guilt always disrupted? He says, well, anything that engenders fear, because don't forget, fear and guilt are what? The same thing. Fear and guilt are, that's why notice he says guilt is always disrupted. Then it turns around and says anything that engenders fear is divisive. Well, that's letting you know that fear and guilt are the same thing. Fear and guilt are the same thing. Fear and guilt are the same thing, and they're disrupted. And it's disrupted because guilt and anything that makes you feel afraid is divisive because it's obeying the law of division. So fear separates us. Fear divides us. So fear operates through division. Fear equals what? Division, not unity. So the more we are programmed to be afraid, which is what we get 24 hours a day on the news, the purpose of that is to make us what? Divisive, separate from each other. And that's exactly what it does. The fear got so great that it even created a lockdown, shutdown, where we're in our separate homes away from each other for 2 years. That's the example of divisiveness, and that's fear. But Spirit was so smart. Do you know what Spirit did where everybody was more or less shut away from each other and more separate than ever? That was when a lot of people did soul searching and introspection for the first time in their life. Because they couldn't go to work and they couldn't go out and they couldn't visit people. For the first time, millions of people had to deal with their own thoughts and what was going on within them. And then what happened? The mass resignation, right? That came out of people saying, well, you know what? I kind of want to do more, and I'm not putting this down as a job, but it's like they say, I want to do more than work at McDonald's. And that's honorable work, don't get me wrong. But a lot of people came to the conclusion that the way they were living their lives was not truly fulfilling and satisfying, and they were ready to claim more for themselves. Why? Because they were alone, had a chance to get in touch with themselves, hear their own thoughts for the first time, because the Course in Miracles teaches that we stay busy with non-essentials so that we won't ask ourselves the deeper questions about our reality. That we can stay caught up in all the little meaningless stuff that people think is important. So he said, because you don't want to ask the real question. He says, and then you go, well, what is the real question? He said, well, the real question is, where do you go for real protection? Like, okay, where do you really go for protection? You know the police can't do it. You know vaccinations doesn't do it. You know, he said, let's be honest. Where do y'all really go for protection? That's what they said. You know, because the stuff that you all have come up with to protect yourself, you know it doesn't really protect you. You can't tell me one thing you do in this world that really protects you. So you need to ask, well, where does my real protection come from? And the Course says, when you ask yourself that question, that's when you really start your sincere spiritual path. So I want to ask you, where do you all really go? It's not going to be your 401k. The banking system could fail tomorrow. You can't count. You can't count on that's going to be what's going to take care of you when you get older. That's what the Course is saying. You need to ask yourself, where do I go for protection? And then he says you need to also ask yourself, you know, are you ready to have real love? Are you ready to have a love that you can count on no matter what, and not a love that's a flaky love that you lose as soon as you don't do what the person wants you to do the way the person wants you to do it, then they withdraw their so-called love from you. That is not love. The Course in Miracles says that is not love. That is not love. That is not love. That is not love. You can't, love is given to everybody the same. Love is given to everybody equally. Love is given to everybody equally. Love is given to everybody equally, which is exactly the opposite to the way we are programmed to believe love is just for one person only. I love my children, but I don't love your children. No, it's not that you love your children. It's that your children are more special to you than my children. That's what you're saying. You're saying, I take care of my family, but I don't take care of your family because my family is special to me, and my family is more special to me than your family is. People from Ukraine are called refugees. You know, people from other countries of color are called illegal immigrants. So a very obvious difference in the way people are treated based on the color of their skin, even by the country. Who's welcome and who's not. Odd that the ones that's not are the people of color. But there's no racism in America. So what is that? The racism in my mind. What is the racism in my mind? I'm seeing the racism in my mind. It's my own racism that I'm seeing. You can only see through your ego. Of course, says it's only your ego that sees other people's egos. So anything you see in somebody else is a quality of your ego. There's no such thing as you high and mighty and loving, seeing all these dastardly racists. No, the racism in my ego, in my guilty mind, in my fearful mind, is seeing what it perceives as racism in others. So rather than me try to change everybody else's minds, what I need to do is get rid of the racism in my own mind, to get rid of racism in the world. Did you hear me?
Yeah.
The minute you go, he's the racist and I got to change his mind, that's a sign of unconsciousness. That's like being in a movie saying, I don't like this scene on the screen, so I go up to the screen and see if I can change it. I got to go up to what? The booth, the projection booth. I got to change the movie. So if you want your life to be different, you got to change the movie. And the movie is your thought system, your belief system. So the Course in Miracles says, so division comes from fear. So if I'm taught to fear you, I will feel separate from you. I will feel divided from you. And the Course says, and the ego is the symbol of the separation. So the ego is nothing but the idea of separation. So everywhere you see ego in the Course, you could just simply say the word separation. Okay, so ego is the symbol of separation, but it's also the symbol of guilt. So the part of my mind that believes it's different from you, feels separate from you, but it also can feel guilt. And guilt is more than merely not of God. Do you know that guilt does not come from God? Guilt does not come from God. God never makes you feel guilty. God never makes you feel guilty. God never makes you feel guilty. Do you know that's the same as saying real love would never make you feel guilty? Someone that really loves you would never try to make you feel guilty. Someone that really loves you would never try to make you feel guilty. You got to take a stand. You got to take a stand. You got to say, okay, I'm going to accept that it's true. And then you know everybody in your life who's expressing love to you, and you'll know everybody in your life that's not. Who is it in your life that's constantly angry at you and trying to get you to do what they want you to do through guilt? And who is it in your life that never tries to make you feel guilty and wants you to feel peaceful and innocent? And even if they got an issue with you, they don't use trying to make you guilty as the way to solve it. They say something like, right now I'm feeling real separate from you. I don't want to feel real separate from you. So what can we do together to get past that block of separation between us? See, that's not making you feel guilty. Nor did you hear me say what I thought you did that I'm so mad about. And it's okay if you share what it is that you're mad about, as long as you're willing to go to the solution after you express yourself. And then go, okay, I'm feeling this way. What can we do not to feel this way? There's a line in the Course where he says, let you recognize, it's a workbook lesson that says, let me recognize the problem has been solved. And you're supposed to say that all day. Let me recognize my problems have been solved. And for a long time I went, wait a minute, now, I still need to get my transmission fixed. That problem hasn't been solved. Right? And then I'm just using a little practical, everyday world example, even though the Course is talking about the mind. But I see what he was saying. It's already been solved. How to have a transmission fixed in the car has already been solved. You know, how you would get that to happen is already, so the problem has been solved. Now you haven't taken it to the place to get it replaced, but the problem has been solved. You need a new transmission. The problem's been solved. You need a new transmission. So every problem you have has already been solved. If you think you don't have enough prosperity and abundance, there's a million ways to increase your prosperity and abundance that's already that's being taught and has been recorded and in books. If you're the worst person in the world when it comes to relationships, your relationships suck, and then did I say your relationships suck? Okay, now there are ways to have relationships that are totally peaceful and loving that's already has been solved, that you could take advantage of, that you could study, that you could learn. Every problem you have has already been solved. Are you willing to avail yourself to the answer? That's the question. So the Course in Miracles says, we don't think we're worth the effort. I went, what? He says, no, the problem is not what I'm telling you all that's hard to do. Jesus in the Course said, y'all don't think you're worth it. You don't think you're worth the effort to do the simple things that I'm telling you to do to be happy. Now, you may think that's not true, but I'm just telling you what the real deal is. If you really thought your peace was valuable and your happiness was really valuable, then you wouldn't let anything come before that, and you do whatever is necessary to make sure you were safe and peaceful. And you certainly wouldn't let another human being stop you from going for your own peace and safety. So guilt is more he said guilt is more than merely not of love. He says guilt is actually the symbol of attack on love, on God. So whenever you're feeling guilty, you're actually attacking love. What? He says, well, don't worry about it. Attacking God, that's a totally meaningless concept except to the ego. He says, and that's you and us. He's like saying, attacking God, that's a meaningless idea except to people who don't know the truth. People who don't know the truth, they actually think they can hurt God. That they can actually do something that God is like laying back on the sofa getting therapy about. You know what I'm saying? Even if God had a human form, which God really doesn't. But the point that I'm making is, the Course says, whenever you feel guilty, the truth is there's a part of you that thinks that somehow or another you can really destroy love, that you could do something to really destroy love. He said that's a meaningless concept except to the ego, somebody who's afraid and have a guilty mind. So to guilty people, love is fragile. To guilty people, love is fragile. To guilty people, or people who haven't learned how to let go of their guilt and fear yet, they think love is fragile and something they can lose real easily. That's why people lie. At the bottom of every lie is the fear of loss. If I thought I wasn't going to lose, if you thought you weren't going to lose, you would tell the truth all the time. If I knew I could tell you anything and everything and I wouldn't lose your love, I could tell you everything and I wouldn't have any private thoughts with you. The only reason why I have private thoughts is that I think I could lose. Think about it. This is not rocket science. The Course says simplicity is very difficult for twisted minds. He said the more twisted your thinking is, the more twisted and distorted the way you look at things are, the more afraid and insecure and angry and full of grievances you are, the more you cannot understand simple answers and simple solutions. That explains a lot. So if you need complex answers, then it's because you have a twisted mind. And so the answer will seem as complex as you need it to be. And that's what's the beauty of God. God is still going to give it to you the way that makes the most sense to you. So if you need real complicated solutions to get out of that situation, the universe will go, here's a bunch of complicated solutions. And if you want a simple solution, then it says, I'll give you a simple solution. Here's a simple solution. Understand that whenever you're feeling guilty, you are absolutely, you need to understand that it's not coming from the truth in you, it's not coming from the love in you, it's not coming from the part of you that's sane and right. The party that's sane and right, it wants to correct errors, correct mistakes, but at the same time do it in a loving way. So yes, you can make mistakes. Mistakes are for correction, but you can't be truly guilty. You cannot lose and change who you really are as a totally innocent, loving being. That's what you really are. That you can't change that. You cannot change that you are loved and that you are loving and that you are lovable, no matter what you think about yourself, no matter what you think about yourself, no matter who you've surrounded yourself with, no matter how life is treating you. You are still loved. You are still lovable. There's a part of you that's still loving, and there's nothing you can do about it. And there's nothing you can do about it. There's a core of you that is very good. There's a core of you that is very good. There's a core of everyone that's very good, and there's nothing you or I or they can do about it. But we have to realize that the person is not being loving because they are afraid and they feel completely separate and cut off from everything and everybody and on their own and the victim of everything they see. You're looking at Putin is afraid. And coming up with as many ways as we can to attack somebody is only going to be doing the same thing they're doing. But I just feel more justified. But it's the exact same act. And in the end, it's what you put out is what you're going to receive. So the Course in Miracles says, do not underestimate the power of your belief that you somehow disobeyed God or attack your Creator or that you could be punished by your Creator. He says, don't underestimate the power of your belief that there's guilt and love, that you can really think you're loving where you're feeling guilty. Don't you really believe that? You believe you could be absolutely loving somebody but still feel a lot of guilt around them about something. Don't underestimate how much you connect guilt with love. Do not underestimate how much we connect guilt and love. I feel so guilty. I feel so guilty. I feel so guilty. I love you and I feel so guilty. I love you and I feel so guilty. I wish I had dealt with you totally differently. I feel so guilty about what I did to you. And no, you were in a relationship that was a special form of fear. And so you're feeling guilt about what you did in that special relationship based in fear. Because if you really loved them, you wouldn't feel guilty. You would just feel the relationship was blessing you and you were blessing them and you wanted to express joy and you wanted to share joy with them. And let's face it, you're not attacking somebody that you really want to experience joy with. So stop saying you love somebody and all you want to do is attack them and you're angry and you feel guilty all the time. You don't. You're afraid of them in that moment. In that moment. Now, 5 minutes later, you might let this love come through and you're truly feeling blessed and joyous. But you are not feeling love at the moment you're feeling angry, guilt, and grievances. Woo, woo. So, this is the belief from which all guilt really stems. He says, so where does all guilt come from? Where does all guilt come from? He says, all guilt is rooted in the idea that somehow or another you have attacked or disobeyed God. That somehow or another you're not right with your Creator. And you're not right with love. He said, that's where all guilt comes from. Really thinking that you have attacked your Creator. What does that mean? Really thinking that I'm not enough and I'm feeling some type of guilt. That I have attacked the idea of unconditional love with the idea of guilt. Your Creator is not making you feel guilty. Your Creator would never make you feel guilty. Your Creator would never make you feel fearful. Your Creator would never frighten you. Your Creator would never punish you. Your Creator would never punish you. Your Creator would only lovingly correct you. Not only the Course says would your Creator lovingly correct your mistakes, yet your Creator would also get rid of the consequences of the mistake you made. Now, when I read that, I went, whoa! You mean you're not only going to correct the mistake that I made, you're going to also get rid of the consequences that I'm going through too? That's beyond my concept of love. That's beyond what I could even figure out. But I have to hear that idea before I can start seeing it and manifesting it. That's why, Course in Miracles students, that's why you hear me focusing in on the book, because he says the first step to changing your mind is simply hearing the truth and then repeating it over and over. And I've noticed in the years that I've been teaching the Course in Miracles, and this is not a putting down on anybody, but I've done this for 40 years. And the thing I've noticed the most about Course in Miracles students, many of them, is they don't study A Course in Miracles. They do not read the book on a consistent level. And they do not do the workbook lessons. That's just a fact. They don't remember what it says. So the Course is saying, if you really want to learn this, then you have to remember it. And guess what, you all? And here's the cool part. He said, I'm going to tell you something that's so good you probably won't do it. I said, okay, what is it? All you have to do is remember what I'm saying to have the miracle. What? Yeah, if you remember the truth, it's a freaking miracle. So if y'all can just remember what I'm saying, you'll get all the blessings that the Course in Miracles promises. If you would just read it and remember what it's saying, even if you don't understand it, and then try to apply it to your life. Then he said, well, what does that mean to apply it to my life? It means use the interpretations that I'm giving you to describe what's happening to you. What? Use the interpretations that the book is giving you about what's happening to you. Well, could you give me an example? Yeah. My boss just cussed me out. The Course in Miracles says I should interpret that as a call for love. So what I should say is my boss had a call for love this morning with me. That's applying A Course in Miracles. It's using the interpretations that the book is giving you, whether you believe the interpretations or not. Because he says if it's the truth, it has anything to do with your belief, it's going to be the truth whether you believe it or not. That's too easy. So I'd rather do 900 different things that other spiritual paths tell me to do than simply go, my boss went off on me this morning, my boss had a call for love. My boss said, now I'm still mad at the sucker, and I'm still upset myself, and I still feel like he did me wrong, but I'm still going to say, my boss had a call for love. Why? Because it's the truth, whether I feel that way or not. And this book is just asking me to tell the truth, whether I believe it or not. There is no easier path than that. It's not even asking you to believe it. It's just asking you, are you intelligent enough to say a simple sentence? What? Are you intelligent enough to say, my boss was calling for love this morning? Can you say that?
My boss was calling for love.
Right. And then I have to remember from reading it, I have to remember that the book told me what? To tell myself that. Well, I wouldn't know to tell myself that if I hadn't read the book. So if you want to have that easy experience of peace and life and joy that you see that the Course in Miracles is promising, all you have to do is be willing to read it and practice trying to remember anything you read and watch what starts to happen in your life. And I'm not asking you to analyze it. Anal is the first part of anal lies. Anal lies. Anal lies. Got it? So don't analyze the Course. Don't try to fit the Course in Miracles into an unhappy man's way of thinking. And you'll watch miracles happen. So mighty companions, I'm going to do a couple of little quick things at the end for us to remember. And thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. I do these on a love offering basis. So if you'd like to make a financial expression of appreciation, as a full-time teacher, I really appreciate it. Let me pass this to you now.
Yeah.
And if you'd like to make a financial expression of appreciation, just go to my website, earlpurdy.com, www.earlpurdy.com. And you can also use Zelle, Cash App, Venmo, and you can use PayPal. All you need is my email address, earlpurdy@earlpurdy.com, earlpurdy@earlpurdy.com. Soon I'm going to be doing an advanced mind training course related to the Course in Miracles for people who actually are studying the Course in Miracles. This is for people who are actually studying the Course in Miracles. If you'd like to know when I'm going to do that, just send me an email to earlpurdy@earlpurdy.com, and I'll put you on the list. And then when I'm ready to do it, I will notify you and let you know. But I repeat, this is going to be training for people who are actually studying the Course, who are reading it, who want to do it, okay, and who like me. All right, this is not. I want you to like me, okay, because you'll be easy to work with, okay. So those are all my requirements. Let me know if you want to do it because it's going to be real. I'm going to bring 40 years of working with this stuff into what we're doing. Then on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, on Facebook Live on the Earl Purdy page. I do Hardcore Course in Miracles Sunday at 1 p.m. Mountain Time. I do Facebook Live on the Earl Purdy page. And also, I do it in a place where if you want to come in person, which is wonderful seeing you all, then you can come, and that's in Denver at 1555 Race Street in Denver, Colorado, 1555. And I'm available for one-on-one coaching, mentoring, and counseling sessions called Clarity Sessions. And if you like to work with me on a one-on-one, then just get in touch with me by going to my website, looking under Clarity Sessions, and it explains it in detail. And then you can self-book a session with me right online. I'm also an astrologer and numerologist, a soul purpose astrologer and numerologist. If you like an interpretation of your chart in terms of helping you realize your full potential of what you can do here in innocence, you know, we weren't just dropped in here because somebody had good or bad sex one night. Okay, that's not why you were here. You have a divine purpose. Okay, you have and that purpose and that path is easy. It's easy. If your life is a struggle, you're not on your path. If your life is a struggle, you are not on your path. If your life is a struggle, you're not doing your path. You're doing somebody else's. You're doing somebody else's path. If you're following your path, your life is not something that's a constant battle and struggle all the time. It means you're not doing your function. You're not doing what you came on this earth to do. That's why you're unhappy. That's why you're unfulfilled. And there are lots of ways that I can help you realize what that is. And I want to do that. Wow. Okay, here we go. Give me a couple of minutes. So what is it that you need to remember? Remember that there's a part of you that has the purpose of making you feel afraid. Because when you feel afraid, you feel separate. So the part of you that wants you to be separate, the ego, the part of you that wants you to feel guilty, that part of you has the purpose of keeping you afraid about one thing or another. Guess what? But the part of you that loves you also has a purpose. And its purpose is to bring you joy and to give you love. And the Course in Miracles says you need to remember when you're dealing with heaven, when you're dealing with real love, you can tell when it's real love. Because there are no guilts. There is no guilt in heaven. There's no guilt in real love. In real love, there's no guilt. There's no anger, in constant anger and upset in real love. But your sane, loving mind, your divine mind is going to correct your ego mind. Your ego mind is going to be corrected, and when it's corrected, nothing will be able to hurt you. You're going to become so protective of your innocence. You're going to become so protective of your joy that your ego cannot affect you anymore. Your fears won't be able to affect you anymore. No upsets will be able to affect you anymore because you will be so happy. You're going to be so joyful. You're going to be so loved. You're going to feel so good that judging yourself and condemning yourself and making yourself feel guilty would never even cross your mind. I want you to hear that. I want you to hear that. So understand that guilt is always disrupted, and guilt is not coming from love. Guilt is not coming from God. So what should you call your guilt? What should you call your guilt? The next time you feel guilt, this is what you should say. The next time you feel fear, this is what you should say. My guilt is a call for God. 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 Guilt is a call for God. Guilt is a call for God. Fear is a call for God. Fear is a call for God. That means fear is a call for love. Fear is a call for love. Guilt is a call for love. Guilt is a call for love. Go. I'm feeling guilty. I'm feeling a deep call for God. I'm feeling guilty. I feel a deep call for the truth. I feel a deep call for love. I feel a deep call for love today. I'm feeling upset today. I feel concerned today. God, I have a deep call for God right now. I have a deep call for truth right now. I have a deep call for God right now. I have a deep call for truth right now. And I'm attacking love right now. I'm trying to make myself think that love isn't there for me right now. I feel angry and upset. I'm not valuing my peace the way that I should right now. I'm feeling upset. I'm not valuing my peace right now. I'm keeping this grievance going. I'm not valuing my peace right now. I'm keeping this anger going. I'm not valuing my peace right now. I'm keeping this lack going. I'm not valuing my abundance right now. I'm keeping my loneliness going. I'm not valuing love right now. You are a call for love. You are a call for love. You are a call for God. When you're upset, you're calling for help. When you're upset, you're calling for help. When you're upset, you're calling for help. When you're afraid, you're calling for help. When you're sad, you're just calling for love. You're just calling for love. These are only two orders of thought. According to the Course, these are the only two orders of thought. Is that you are expressing love or you're calling for it. You are expressing love or you are calling for it. You are expressing peace or you are calling for peace. You are expressing peace or you are calling for peace. You are expressing joy or you are calling for joy. Those are the only two orders of thought in your mind. That's how much you are loved. So think about how many times a day you call for help. Think about how many times a day you're calling for love. And you realize you're praying most of the day. You're praying to God. You're praying to love all the time. Mighty companion, may the Course be with you. Let's acknowledge us. Come on, let's acknowledge us. Come on. Yeah. Remember, what you're going to see out there is what's going on inside you. There you go. Lord have mercy. 4 times. Remember, 4 times. Watch it or listen to it 4 times. And please share the video. Hey, you put some clothes on.
I don't want to.